In this lesson, we're going to talk about the practical aspect of installing new software, which we discussed in the last lesson. We'll be using all the commands that we discussed, the theoretical information behind, and we're going to use them to install the core software which we need to run our WordPress server and our sort of WordPress hosting platform. That software is going to be the MySQL server, the PHP programming language, some libraries that connect PHP to MySQL, a monitoring application, which we'll use to monitor our hosting platform once we've got this all set up. And then we'll talk about custom repositories. We've talked about repositories in the previous lesson, but there's essentially a service that a third party can provide. So anyone can do this. You can have your own repository, or PPA, the Personal Package Archive, in Ubuntu. You can take that job and do it yourself instead of pushing it onto a package maintainer at whatever distribution you're using. So we'll be adding an apt repository by the Nginx people. The developers of Nginx have their own repository where you can download a stable version of the Nginx web server, which we'll be using. This process is essentially the same for any third-party packages, for any PPAs which you install. So you'll know the process once you've done this. And after that, we'll be done. We'll have all the base packages installed. So let's get started. First, we've got to connect back to our VPS, that is our server that is out on the internet somewhere. Use the same command that you used last time. That is, we're using the SSH program to connect as the root user at whatever IP address your server has. So this IP address will be different for you. Once you're logged in, you're going to update and upgrade your software here using the apt-get tool. You can just hit up, the up arrow, when you're done to get that same command again and then edit it. So you don't have to retype everything. Again, remember to always be lazy. We're going to update everything that's out of date on the server, and it's being installed now. So all these packages have been downloaded, they're being unpacked, and then they're being essentially copied over the older versions on our system. So you can see that this process has finished, and we're going to simply paste in the command that I showed before. That is apt-get install MySQL server, PHP MySQL, PHP 5 FPM, and monet. PHP MySQL. We'll do some troubleshooting on that. apt cache search PHP. We'll grep for MySQL. There's no way that this has changed. PHP, there we see. So it's actually PHP 5 MySQL. So I have misnamed this. So this is actually PHP 5 MySQL, which we want, not PHP MySQL. And again, you can see just an example of finding the package name that you're actually looking for after getting an error using apt cache search, which searches the repository list of software. We've also used some little more advanced bash. We're piping the output of this command, so every package with PHP, and then we're telling grep, please find everything in that output that contains MySQL, this string of text, and only show us those. So here you see this is all the output, but filtered down to only the stuff that contains this string. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the advanced bash section, but grep is just one of those tools that you'll be using a ton, and here's a nice impromptu example. Okay, so this should actually run now. You can go ahead and accept. Again, if you were scripting this somehow, you would simply pass the -y argument so that you wouldn't be prompted here, right? Because this would essentially halt your script. Nothing would happen after this. Okay, so MySQL Server will prompt you for a password. I noted this on the slide. So you can come up with a reasonably decent MySQL password now, but we'll actually change this to be much more secure in the next step when we do a little bit of hardening. So we're going to use a simple password for now, and then we'll harden these permissions a little bit in the next lesson. Once you've entered that password and confirmed, it'll finish installing MySQL and continue with the installs. Just a quick note, you can also see that as part of the install on Ubuntu, this is actually starting some of these processes. We'll talk about managing processes and starting and enabling them in one of the upcoming lessons, but for now just know that this is sort of happening in the background here. You can see that, for example, it just started the PHP 5 FPM process as it finished installing. However, if we reboot the machine, it likely won't be enabled. So this is only sort of good for our current session on the machine, but we will change that in about 2 lessons. Okay, we've reached the final stage of our install process here, where we will use this third-party repo or repository, that is the Personal Package Archive, the PPA, to install a stable version of Nginx that's pre-compiled for us and provided as a package straight from the developers themselves. So that's done with the add apt repository command, where you add that repository to the ones that your Ubuntu install automatically checks for updates, and then you simply run another manual repository update to make sure you've got the most up-to-date package information, and then you can go ahead and install Nginx, and it will automatically be taken from this third-party repository. Let's go ahead and do that. So first, we'll paste in the add apt repository. This is just a little banner that tells us which releases are supported. You can just press enter. We're going to download and import the cryptographic key for this repository, and that really just means that a malicious third party can't upload an evil Nginx web server package or binary. Your server will actually check to make sure that that's been signed cryptographically by the developers themselves. Now, on the other hand, if the developer key gets stolen, that's another story. So now we've added that repository. Now we'll run apt-get update again to make sure that we actually get updated package information from that new repository which we just added. And now we can run the install command. So we can say apt-get install Nginx. And that will install our web server for us. Now, one of the other side effects of a package manager is you can see a package manager checks for dependencies, that is, other packages that are required for the one that you're installing. And Nginx has some dependencies which we are pulling in now automatically as well. So you can just go ahead and hit yes, and this will automatically install Nginx and all of its dependencies. I'm going to just quickly check to make sure we're now actually opening on port 80, and you can see this is just a common network troubleshooting command, and it shows that we're now open on port 80. So I can actually check, and you can do the same thing. Just type in ifconfig on your server here, copy your IP address, and when you paste that into a browser, you should see the default Nginx page load. So congratulations, here you can see this is the welcome to Nginx default Nginx HTML page being served automatically by your Nginx server to let you know that things are working as they should be. So congratulations, you're actually running a static website. This is a static HTML page on your web server, which is accessible from any internet-connected machine. It's kind of a big step forward. So you're now running an actual server, a VPS, out on the internet, and now you're running a web server and a website. Okay, so this has been a big step forward. You've now got everything installed that you need in terms of software, and now the real fun begins. This is where we configure everything to actually get your platform set up and host your first WordPress site on it. In the next video, we're going to start covering just a little bit of background about managing services and services, daemons, processes, all that terminology that you need to know to go on and quickly and comfortably get this set up. So I'll see you in the next lesson.